Hello everyone, this is Venkatesh Nataraj. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to create a virtual machine on Hyper-V console. I have a Windows 11 Pro machine which is running with 32 GB of RAM. I'll walk you through on the process how to create a virtual machine on this machine. So right click on the name of your PC on the left side, or you can click on the new on the right side, and you have an option to first select virtual machine. The moment you click on virtual machine, you have this wizard. Click on next, give the virtual machine name, whatever the name you would like to assign. So I will be giving Windows 11. Anyways, I'm going to create a Windows 11 virtual machine. So I'll be selecting this. Now here we have an option to store the virtual machines in a different location. I'll be talking about this in detail in the next video. So for now, don't change any of your settings. Click on next. You have two options, generation 1 and generation 2. Generation 1 is pretty old, which supports both 32-bit of operating system and 64-bit. And generation 2, it only supports the 64-bit, and it has UEFI based firmware. That means the BIOS it is running, it is much advanced. I'll be doing a separate video about this BIOS settings, but for now I will be selecting generation 2. Make sure whatever the generation you want to select it rightly. In case if you want to go back later, that's not possible. So once you create the virtual machine, it is created on whatever the generation, it has to be on the same generation. You cannot roll back to the generation 1, or you cannot upgrade it to generation 2. That's how it is. So select it wisely, depends on your requirement. In my opinion, I would recommend you to select generation 2 technically, because we will be using most advanced versions anyways. Now click on next. Here we have to assign the memory, that means the RAM, random access memory. So we have two options here. One is a startup memory, and there is an option, there's a checkbox for use dynamic memory for virtual machine. What exactly these two are? The startup memory is the initial amount of memory it requires to boot up and to run the virtual machine. Now that is something you can define it. Now I can give around 2000, that is a 2 GB of RAM, or I can give 4000, that's a 4 GB of RAM. Depends on the size that you want, you can give it for the startup. Now there is another option, use dynamic for memory for the virtual machine. What exactly this is? Dynamic memory in the sense, if you are creating a virtual machine with 8 GB or 16 GB, and you don't have to give the complete 16 GB at the one stretch, so it can be gradually upgrade the RAM. I mean, it will start consuming the RAM, depends on the usage. If the user is hardly doing any work, but the virtual machine is given 8 GB, there's no point of giving 8 GB. So depends on the usage of the virtual machine, the RAM size will increase. So I would recommend you to go with the usage, use this option, so that you will save some RAM, so you can run multiple virtual machines at a stretch. Now click on next. Here you have to configure the network settings. I will be doing a separate video about the network settings. So for now, just click on next. And here you have to create a virtual hard disk. So it is a tricky part. Now since you are creating a new virtual machine, that new virtual machine requires a hard drive. So you can either use the existing virtual machine of any other virtual machines. I mean, you can use the existing virtual hard disk of any other virtual machine, or you can create a new one, or you can select a virtual hard disk later. That means it's up to you. You can create the machine without a hard drive. So you have these three options. I will go with creating a virtual hard disk for now, and you have to select the location where it's supposed to be stored. Again, I'll come back on a separate video about this settings, how to select this. But for now, click on next, and let this size to be 127. It's almost the same like RAM. You will have to assign some sort of memory for the hard drive. The maximum what it's supposed to be, you will assign it here. You will mention it here. Now as soon as you click on next and finish, it will not occupy entire 127 GB. It will gradually increase, depends on the usage. So it's always recommend to give whatever the size it is recommending, and we can anyways turn this into a static or dynamic hard drives later. Now click on next. Here is the tricky part again. Now since this is a new virtual machine, and what how do you want to install the operating system, whether you want to install via your USB or a ISO file, or you want to install it later, or you want to install it via the network. So for the Windows deployment services, generally it will trigger through the network. So you have these three options. For now, I'm going to install it with the ISO image. So I will be browsing to my PC. I will give the virtual machine ISO, the operating system ISO image here, and I will click on next. So as soon as you click on finish, it will create the new virtual machine on the Hyper-V environment. On this console, you can see the virtual machine that has been created. Now as soon as right click and click on connect and start, this virtual machine will start. So this is the video of explaining how to create the virtual machine. I'll be showing in detail about each of these options. What are these options, what kind of options we have, what is the checkpoint, what is the network, where do we store the hard drives, how can we later change the connection to installing from a network. All these things I'll be discussing in the upcoming videos. Hope this information is useful. Thank you so much.